Sound definitely can harm us.
Okay.
Creation and destruction both start and end with sound. There are actually weapons that are based on this particular understanding, where you have like these devices that are made to generate frequencies that can leave a person feeling disoriented. May not be audible sound. Sometimes it's a really low sound that is below the listening capacity. Sometimes it's a really high sound.
Is there any sound that has been mentioned of in our scriptures which we still have not decoded yet?
I think so much.
Yeah.
When an individual is making the sound of or shh or ha, what's happening sound helps with sleep as well. I have had trouble falling off to sleep for most of my life, and now, in fact, just the other day a friend said that you drop dead like that. Om is actually covering all states of consciousness if chanted. It's more effective to know the meaning of the mantra and not just to mindlessly chant it. Every Yoga Nidra session, we would say any sankalp taken during Yoga Nidra is bound to come true. Thomas Edison was known for doing this. He realized that, I get the most creative ideas when I'm about to doze off to sleep.
Can sound really alter our DNA, or is it just a myth? Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Uncharted Conversations. Today our episode is absolutely based on sound healing, and the guest that we have today, she is a psychologist and a yoga and sound therapist. Her expertise lies in Yoga Nidra, somatic releases, and sound therapy. She collaborates with Swaram and Om Yogshala as visiting faculty, and her integrative approach of combining yogic philosophy, movement science, and psychoacoustics can help you heal your body. So why delay in the conversation? Let's just get in straight away. Hi Priyanjali, welcome to Uncharted Conversations.
Hi Natasha, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure is all ours, and I'll right away dive into the conversation. So since we're talking about sound healing, right? According to Nada Brahma, it's said that sound is God, right? That is the primordial sound from which the entire universe has been manifested. What is your take on that, as being also a sound healer and sound therapist?
I love that you start with that question straight from the Big Bang.
Yes.
So that is true. In fact, this is, I think, one of the key aspects that combines the mysticism and the science of sound, because, we've got these different old texts in all religions, be it, if you read in the Bible, if you read in the Quran, Hindu texts, they talk about the primordial sound, or they'll talk about at the start there was the word of God.
Yeah.
These different aspects which kind of indicate or take you towards a sound or some essence of a vibration.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, from a science perspective, we then hear of the Big Bang. We also look at different aspects like the string theory, which talks about how there isn't just a point, but there's a vibrating string that is there in terms of the fundamental particle that exists. So what is really interesting and between these two is the fact that it all boils down to vibration of frequency. So when we look at the terminology, one may be using the word God and another one may be using the word frequency or vibration. So even in space, space is vacuum essentially once you are out of the atmosphere. So sound needs a medium to move. But once there's vacuum, we know that there's still some vibration happening. It's just not sound. Right? So there's still that frequency that exists. So I love this question because I actually feel like this is what bridges the gap between science and mysticism of sound, because essentially it's all frequency, it's all vibration. And as we dive deeper into sound therapy, we look into slightly more nuanced aspects of sound, like how it affects people, how it affects your mood, how being in the vicinity of certain people affects you. And that then correlates to different aspects of a spiritual practice like Sangha, like what you surround yourself with. So when we say sound is God or the primordial sound, we're essentially talking about vibration or frequency.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when, if sound was the first manifestation, does that mean that sound has the potential to create and destroy? Like every sound has the potential to either create or destroy?
Well, it is, again, it's a two-way answer. One is the sound that right now we're making through communication, because there is an aspect of sound which involves meaning. So, of course, it can both create and destroy, because comprehension comes into question, us actually being able to understand each other. But yes, in terms of actual vibration and frequency as well, and if we move beyond just the human sound, if we move into vibration and frequency, then we've got sounds from a scientific aspect, like an ultrasound or an infra, so either really high frequencies or really low frequencies. Again, they can, through physics and through actually proven science, can destroy things. But I love to look at it again from two lenses, because we can also create and destroy things through the meaning that sound holds. This is important in sound therapy as well, because it's not just about the frequencies that we expose the individual to, but it's also the intention with which we expose them to. So if the primordial sound, as we say, is the most important sound that we have, that means that creation and destruction both start and end with sound.
Wow. Wow. That's deep. Interesting. Tell me, because we always say that, the sound of the universe lies in Om, right? What exactly Om does to our body, to our energy, to our consciousness, what is it and how does it do it? If, for example, from listening to Om, what exactly happens? What transpires?
So there are so many things that happen with just this really tiny sound of Om.
Exactly.
And it's also very interesting. I mean, I could just do an entire podcast on Om, because because Om itself, like, it's not just Om, it's actually A, U, Ma, the three sounds.
Right.
So if we look at it from, say, let's start from the text, from the Mandukya Upanishad. A, U and Ma signifies the Holy Trinity. Whether that Holy Trinity is the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the creator, the preserver, the destroyer. It also signifies the three states of consciousness. A being the awake, the Jagrut, U being the Swapna, the dream state, and Ma being the Shushupti, the deep sleep. So it's very interesting how, from the text aspect, that's the sound of Om. But Om doesn't just end at A, U and Ma. Usually, if you notice, when we chant Om, there's a brief momentary silence after Om. And we find that to be a very pregnant pause, like suddenly, in that brief moment, even if it is just a few milliseconds, we feel a stillness. That silence signifies the fourth level of consciousness, which is Turiya, which is basically, someone would call it collective consciousness, someone would call it a constant consciousness that is running in the background all the time, as the Upanishads would say. Thus signifying that Om is actually covering all states of consciousness if chanted correctly and if chanted with intention. What's also very interesting is, from a science perspective, it's been shown that, A, U, Ma, of course, ends with the humming, the Ma. And it's already been shown that when we hum, which is why vocal toning, which is why Nada Yoga is found helpful, is because it releases nitric oxide in the body. And what that does is it essentially just regulates or balances out the body. It's helping your body to enter a rest and recovery state. And so both from, a more spiritual aspect, but also from a scientific aspect, the biochemical changes that happen in your body when you hum, when you vocal tone, all of that contributes to then overall well-being, whether that's mental, psychological, or even physical. But Om, this is just in a nutshell. Om, if we dive even more, there are so many other aspects of Om. Almost every different religion will have a word which is similar to Om. So, the chant or the three sounds are written in the text, but you have different versions of it. The intention essentially is the same.
Okay. Since our body is constituted with 70% water, right? And we have often seen, especially in sound healing sessions, that how water responds to sound, right? So, since we were talking about, what Om does for our bodies, so take me through that when I'm listening to Om, right? How does it, like, in terms of my brain frequencies, what kind of brain frequency it unlocks? Where does my brain go to? What happens to all the water in my body? What all is it unlocking in my body? And how that also has the potential to connect me to a higher consciousness, just like one word. That is something that just always blows my mind away, that it's as short a word called Om, but it has the potential to literally take you through, multiple dimensions at the same time. How does that happen? Especially when you've done sound healing sessions.
Yeah, well, that's a potent question. There's a lot of layers to. Yeah. So one aspect is the water element, or the actual exposure to the vibration of Om. So we all know that when we are chanting, like I just spoke about, the different biochemical releases that happen in your body. But aside from that, when we're actually looking at our body as just a system, so I'm going to break it down, and given my background in psychology, I will also take a little bit of a science route and also the other route, which is more towards the script and the text. So when we are exposing ourselves to vibrations, our body being so much of water, there is literally vibration happening at the cellular level.
Okay.
So when you are chanting, apart from different aspects like releasing nitric oxide, you're literally sending that frequency into different parts of the body down to the cellular level. Now, what frequency you're chanting at really depends from person to person. There are people who, there's a school of thought that completely has standardized these frequencies. I personally am not a big fan of that, because I feel like humans are complex and it's hard to standardize. Today I might wake up at a certain frequency and tomorrow maybe a different frequency. I feel like there are a lot of controlling variables that affect our frequency. Sure. But if you look at the ancient tradition of Nada Yoga, when we do our riyas, we don't start at a standard frequency, unlike Western music. We wake up in the morning, we take a couple of sighs, and we find our sa. We find our root note for that day. And then you tune your tanpura based on that note, and then you start your chanting or your riyas. So similarly for Om, the frequency itself, I can't say, because today you may be chanting at a different frequency, tomorrow at a different frequency. But what is interesting is to track how those frequencies are varying every day.
And what kind of impact it is having.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, and my teacher taught me this, my teacher Aurelio, who is in Auroville, he actually requested all of us that, sometimes try to take your morning sigh, like the frequency. And I noticed that when I am ill, on days when I had, fever or something, how different the frequencies were as opposed to days when I was completely fine. So it's very interesting how that impacts you. And then when you chant Om, then again you take your sigh as a frequency and then notice. So this is why it's also very interesting when we talk about sound therapy, because so much of it is yet to be discovered by science, so much of it is anecdotal, but so much of it is self-work as well. So when it comes to Om, my invitation to you would be to not sort of
get stuck to
a frequency, but to see how it impacts you.
Sure.
And the other aspect is how this one word can make us feel so calm and relaxed. And that's because we are able to tune into the frequency that serves us in that moment. So, you could have days when you're going home and then you possibly take a breath and then you find another frequency and you're like, Om. So you find different ranges of Om, and there will come a point, most of us when we are chanting Om, we are comfortable. If you're not comfortable, I would actually invite you to keep chanting till you feel like your vocal cords are not straining, but you're actually comfortable. So a lot of us have to also be reminded of how to chant Om, because some of us would continue to chant at a frequency that may not actually be the frequency that's serving us in the moment.
How does one know that what frequency is serving me? Because also continuing what you said, what I thought when you said frequency, and I also would want you to kind of clear it for the audience, that we are not only talking about at what decibel or what pitch I am reciting Om at, Because I always used to think that when you talk about frequency, it's more about the intention and what is my emotional vibration at that point of time. Like, am I chanting it from more of a gratitude space? Am I happy? That frequency are we talking about, or is it just the pitch that we are talking about?
I would say the former.
Sure.
So it's about how it leaves you feeling.
Okay.
So that is why the silence after Om is as important as the sound of Om. So to keep chanting Om till you find that even if it is a momentary silence after Om where you can feel a stillness, then we've truly chanted Om at the frequency and at the level that is serving us. Otherwise, it's just another chore. It's just another chant. This is why I feel like mantras and chants, they serve us. They're very powerful vibrational and vocal tools. But sometimes we're just doing it, for the heck of it, but not paying attention to what happens after. Am I feeling that momentary silence after? So the reason for that to happen, like I already explained, the science behind it, the biochemical changes, the nitric oxide. But at the same time, we get so drawn to the science of things that we forget that what is the intention with which I am chanting Om. Also, to break it down in a very layman term, if you're chanting Om and you feel like your vocal cords are strained, you feel like you're getting heart palpitation, and also that your breath is not really regular, then again, that's a great indication, because chanting is essentially a form of breathing or singing. This is why you'll meet a lot of singers and they have excellent lungs, because singing is breath work essentially. You're inhaling, no, and then again you inhale, and so there's a rhythm that comes through slowly. If that rhythm is not there, or if you're struggling, then already you know that perhaps this is not really fully serving me in that moment.
I've heard one thing about chanting of Om, that there are 3 ways, and in fact more than 3 ways to chant it. So when you are humming it like out externally, right, of course it's going to serve you. One is when you're only doing it within your heart, right, and you're not saying it. Another is that you really desperate to chant it, right? Your intention is there, but you hold yourself back. And I've heard that's the one that serves you the best. Is there any such, way or method that actually works? Or this is just like different schools of thought talking about how Om should be chanted?
This is a school of thought. Again, like it's with sound therapy, there's still a lot to be uncovered from a empirical or a scientific perspective. So it is a school of thought, but again, it comes down to that same thing. It's the intention. So, one is you focus so much on the sound that people get drawn into the pitch. And hence your earlier question was that, does pitch matter is the intention. So if we are vocalizing it, then maybe we're so caught up in the pitch or how it's going to sound to the external world. Then we focus on the internal. So then we focus on with what intention do I want to chant it, and I chant it internally. By doing that, you're redirecting your thoughts. That means that, your mind isn't going to what am I going to eat for lunch and dinner, but it's just with the Om, but within you. And then the third aspect is where you have the intention and you kind of also, you're sort of working. It's a play on intention, controlling and managing your need for external validation. And at the same time, vocally, if I understood correctly what you were saying, vocally you're still trying to engage those muscles. A lot of times what I tell individuals when we chant Om is a similar practice that is done in certain forms of Indian classical singing like Dhrupad, where they will tell you, take your voice out from this part of the body or that part of the body. So how I usually like to chant Om is I actually try to take it into different parts of the body as well. So the A comes from the stomach, the U comes here, and the M comes into the head. And you can also play along and then change these different areas. So then you're truly tuning in. Then the focus is not just on the sound of the Om, but the feeling it brings in your body.
Eventually that should be the purpose of chanting Om, right? How you're feeling after chanting it, right? So mantras also serve the same purpose, right? That's why we say that mantras also hold a lot of power. Again, what I have understood, as in what you said, because what we typically believe about mantras is that there is a way to recite it, right? Only then it will unlock its own purpose, right? If I'm just saying it in a normal way, it's not going to help me. But what I'm hearing from you is that after chanting it, how are you feeling, right? What is that feeling within you, and what is the intention behind it? So does the same thing apply to mantras also?
Absolutely. In fact, that's why they say that it's more effective to know the meaning of the mantra and not just to mindlessly chant it. Sure, one could eventually get into a mindless chanting, and that's a whole different science. Basically, you're mindlessly chanting, so your brain is not really making sense of it, and eventually drops into an alpha brainwave state where you're sort of in an idling mode. It switches off the brain, so to speak. So that is one aspect, but there's also the intentional chanting, which I personally prefer, that if you understand the meaning of the mantra, then you chant it with that intention. There are some mantras that are aimed towards, different reasons. It could be that this mantra will help me to be more focused, or this mantra is more working on this aspect of my body. Like, for example, we've got Bija mantra, which works on the 7 chakras. In Chinese medicine, we've got the 6 sounds that relate to different parts. Like, you've got some, like for liver, you have the sound of shh, so these kind of really interesting older traditions that are there. So it does help. I feel like intentionality helps, because then it seeps deeper from the physical to the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual aspect. Having said that, like any therapy modality, you could have a top-down approach or a holistic approach, but you could also have a bottom-up approach, which is where you just keep going into a regular chant without knowing the meaning, and then eventually you've gotten into a particular breath flow, and you've gotten into this rhythm of just activating your alpha brainwave state. So in that case, you're then targeting it solely from the physical or the body perspective, which is also used in today's day and age, because a lot of the ailments in today's day and age, it starts with overstimulation of the physical body, and a lot of people can't access deeper emotional and spiritual states. So then this is why we then take the bottom-up approach, which is we start from the physical body and then go a little bit deeper. But personally, I prefer the holistic approach.
You spoke about alpha brainwaves, right? And we're talking about sound healing. So if you can just deep dive a little and decode it for people, what all our brain frequencies there, and how sound healing alter that, also helping us healing our own body, our nervous system. How does it help?
Yeah, so I think that is at the core of sound therapy, and this is possibly the most researched bit of sound therapy. We still have some things to explore when it comes to chanting and mantras from a scientific perspective. But one thing that we definitely know about sounds and brainwave is that we all have this ability in our system called entrainment. And what that essentially means is that when we listen to a particular frequency, our brainwaves get entrained or aligned to that frequency. This literally translates to actual sound or vibration, but it also, I think, can extend to the people around us. This is why, in text, you'll hear that, be mindful of the people you surround yourself with, because we all come with different frequencies and we're constantly entraining or aligning to each other's frequency. From the scientific perspective, what this means is that they've actually they've done experiments. We have people like Gerald Oster who did experiments on what kind of frequencies or brain waves, what kind of brain waves alteration happen as you expose yourself to certain frequency. For instance, an 8 to 12 hertz helps us to get into an alpha brainwave state. But you'll also notice that it's below the listening capacity of humans, because humans listen between 20 to 20,000 hertz. So 8 to 12 hertz may not be audible, but it'll still be a vibration. It'll still be a frequency that can be around you without you being aware of it, without you actually hearing it. This is why I feel like sound therapy is so much more than just sound therapy. It's also vibrotherapy or vibroacoustic therapy, because we try to actually work with the concept of entrainment by exposing individuals not to the exact frequency, in this case 8 to 12, for example, for alpha brainwave. We actually expose individuals to different frequencies the difference of those frequency could be 8 to 12. This is the same concept that's used in binaural beats as well. So to give you an example, if you can hear, just an example, like 100 hertz, and then somebody else is also playing a 92 hertz. Your brain is not just going to listen to the 100 or the 92, it's also going to listen to the difference between the two. And that's 8. And what that develops is a really low, almost inaudible vibration that is pushing your body into an alpha brainwave state. So this is why in sound therapy we use multiple instruments at a time, or we'll use instruments with a lot of resonance, a lot of varying frequencies. Like a singing bowl, it's very hard to measure it because it's not playing just one note. It's actually playing a spectrum of notes, thus creating overtones, thus creating frequencies that may be as low to put you in an alpha brainwave state. So it's this concept of entrainment that is then used in sound therapy to bring people into different states. Alpha is more of an idling state. Usually if you go deeper through meditation, you can also enter then your delta brainwave state, theta brainwave state. These brainwave states are also achieved when we fall off to sleep. So a good example is right now we're awake and alert and talking, you're comprehending, I'm going into my memory bank and pulling out everything. So we're at a beta brainwave. As I go on and on the same topic, for example, and I turn into this boring lecturer from school and you start to drift away, you're kind of there, you're idling, but you're not really present. You've gone into an alpha. Then you find yourself drifting between sleep and wakefulness. Maybe you have a little bit of dream here and there. You're going into further deeper state of theta, and then delta, you've gone into deep sleep. We try to mimic that in sound therapy through entrainment. So that's essentially what we do. Now it's already been proven that once the body enters an alpha or a delta or even a theta brainwave state, it enters rest and recovery mode. Or from a biological perspective or a physiological perspective, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. What that means is that all your resources which needs to flow into the body. So I'll just break this down. Imagine if you are in a sympathetic nervous system activation. That means you're in a fight or flight mode. Your body is trying to conserve its energy. But you see a bear in front of you and you want to fight it. So what it's going to do is it's going to send all your blood circulation to your hands and your legs. It's going to optimize and limit some of the circulation to your vital organs so you can fight this bear. Just an example. Now the bear has gone away and now your body is ready to come back to its usual. So then the parasympathetic nervous system activates and it re-optimizes all the resources into the body. So now your vital organs are functioning properly again, your respiratory, digestive tract, all of those things. Most of us are in constant sympathetic activation, constantly stimulated. So when we try to come back to our usual, we may require external tools like yoga, breathwork, sound therapy to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And then once you've activated parasympathetic, that's when your body enters the rest and recovery. That's when your body has the most capacity to heal. This is why I also constantly say sound therapy and not sound healing. And then if somebody asks, oh, so you're a sound healer, I have to remind them that you are the healer. I am essentially through entrainment just trying to put your body into alpha and delta brainwave state. So it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So you enter rest and recovery and then you heal yourself. Because I think we all have to be reminded that we all have the capacity to heal ourselves. But we are just not entering that rest and recovery mode often, which we do when we fall off to sleep. But that's also another thing that's been affected a lot lately. Sleep.
Yeah. So is this the mode, rest and recovery, where basically we can access then all of the benefits? I mean, I'm just not talking about the physical body, that, I'm only healing my physical body, but I'm also talking about unlocking creativity. I'm also talking about spiritual awakening. Does then all of it happens in that mode when my body is in rest and recovery, and that is the reason people are able to unlock that kind of genius and that kind of peaked creativity because they get into that state?
Yes, because your body, think of your body like, if you have a battery and the battery runs out, then you charge the battery and then the battery can work again. Now, if we're not entering rest and recovery often enough and we're constantly overstimulated, then the body is constantly running out of resources. So, from a very metaphysical level, yes, but also from the psychological level, certain aspects of the cognition actually is heightened when we are in rest and recovery, and also when we're in the in between. So there's a really fun thing about creativity. This is one of my most fun examples of creativity. So Thomas Edison was known for doing this. He realized that, I get the most creative ideas when I'm about to doze off to sleep. And that's essentially your alpha, right? So and now it's been proven, but what he used to do was he would actually carry these like metal balls in his hands, and he would have like a metal plate underneath, and sitting up he would try to doze off. And then once he's fully dozed off, the ball would fall on the metal plate, create a clang, and then, he'll wake up and he'll be like, okay, now let me pen down the first thought. And you might have also noticed that when we're about to fall off to sleep, we get these dreams, and then suddenly we'll wake up and be like, oh, that was a really odd dream. So this is just an example and a fun way to show how alpha brainwave state does actually encourage things like creativity, which are different aspects of cognition. Also other activities like problem solving, really high cognitive skills, they get heightened when we go into even other forms of brainwaves. So gamma is known for, again, being like associated with high cognitive skills. So there's clear studies to indicate how these different brainwaves then have an impact on these different aspects.
So then we are saying that there is no one particular frequency to get someone in a state where maybe they can manifest better, or they can, get into their highly creative side, or any spiritual awakening. What I'm trying to say is that are there different frequencies for different outcomes?
So this is again an interesting and a controversial topic, because we've got different schools of thought. So we do have, nowadays we have different frequencies. Like we've got the solfeggio, and we've got the love frequency, and these different schools of thought that have come forward, and there's still a lot to be uncovered from a science perspective. What happens in sound therapy is, because it's so difficult to standardize, because each person's reaction and response to different sound is different, so one can't replicate the same results. Which means that most of the studies, because I myself researching on sound therapy in Auroville, we find it challenging to then standardize a frequency. Because today, if I hear some note at this particular frequency and it's really calming, tomorrow, does it have the same effect on me? Maybe, maybe not. So it becomes challenging to standardize the frequency. Yet, there have been some smaller studies done, which has then led to people coming up with these different frequencies, but most of them are, again, anecdotal in nature. So I'm also playing it really safe and stating it from a science perspective. Having said that, we all know that it has an impact on us. We all have that one breakup song we listen to, even now, when it takes us back to how we felt as a teenager. We all have this one inspirational song that we listen to and we feel like we're in our own coming of age movie. So we do have a big reaction and response to these frequencies, but to standardize them would be challenging. Having said that, certain frequencies like 432, a lot of people listen to 432 and they feel very calm after listening to 432. But at the same time, you will see that a lot of people would listen to flute and harmonium and violin and feel calm. Now, is it the effect of the spectrum of frequencies that these instruments generate, or is it the frequency itself that is having an impact? That's something for us to still uncover. But yeah, and there was more to your question, I believe, which I might be missing out.
I just wanted to know this only, that are there any particular frequencies for a particular outcome? It's because, when you go on YouTube and you find all these solfeggio and, this is the frequency that'll get you in the state where you can manifest better and all that. So, what I'm hearing from you, and I think you also being a sound therapist, I mean, you have also stated it before that, let's not standardize it. It's all about how you as a person are connecting with the sound, even when we were talking about Om, right? How you are feeling, basically. So we should not be standardizing it, right?
But also what's interesting is that if we talk about manifesting, or we talk about making deeper impact on our at a subconscious or an unconscious level, in order for that to happen, we again must enter rest and recovery mode. We again must enter a particular brainwave state that reminds us that we are safe. And again, sound can help with that. So maybe there's no, according to me, or according to hard science, I should say, not according to me, there's no particular frequency. But if you are able to enter that state of complete calmness or parasympathetic activation, you do have better chances of manifesting, of embedding something in your subconscious.
Because you're calm, no? That's why. It's easy.
And then it's also been proven through, like if you look at the text now, like if I go again into the other aspect of it. So we've got practices like Yoga Nidra, which is essentially putting the body into what we call the hypnagogic state, or the state between sleep and wakefulness. And what that means from brainwave state is that you're basically putting the body into alpha, maybe even delta. And then in Yoga Nidra, what Swami Satyananda Saraswati spoke about when he systemized this practice was that you end up embedding a sankalp or a deep affirmation into your mind, and then you continue the practice. So you kind of put your body into this alpha brainwave state, and then you embed this sankalp. And you do this practice repeatedly, until it gets hardwired into your unconscious. That is why in every Yoga Nidra session, we would say any sankalp taken during Yoga Nidra is bound to come true. So you're not just embedding the sankalp, but you're embedding the belief that whatever sankalp I'm taking is bound to come true. And when that particular belief is being presented to you, you're in hypnagogic state or an alpha brainwave state. So there are practices in yoga that would say that you can embed sankalp, or you could affect your subconscious or manifest in this case. But that happens because we're in a certain state of mind or brainwave state. The other interesting aspect is that Swami Satyananda Saraswati, I think, referred to this aspect of the Mandukya Upanishad, because when we access different levels of consciousness, from Jagrat to Swapna to Sushupti, to what we're doing in the in-between is we have a little taste of the Turiya, the collective consciousness, or the consciousness that is all
super consciousness.
The super consciousness. So that is again one of the key fundamentals why we would say that, okay, it's easier to embed, because you're constantly being able to access that when we're in the in-between. So imagine being in a hypnagogic state or an alpha brainwave where you're kind of, swaying between sleep and wakefulness. It means that you're already being able to access the Turiya. And that is again one of the reasons why then the sankalp can get further embedded into your system. And I love to use this example, especially when I am working with individuals who want to eventually become sound therapists, and they want to understand the science aspect, but also the Indian psychology or the yogic text aspect. Now, when we look at consciousness, we in psychology we look at the conscious, the subconscious, the unconscious, and it's kind of like, you think of it like a pyramid, like a layer. I actually would make a physical model, and I've done this in a few lectures, where I would flip the model. So instead of 1, 2, 3, imagine like this.
So all existing simultaneously.
Yeah, so they exist simultaneously. And then you've got the Jagrat, the wakefulness, you've got the Swapna, you've got the Sushupti, and then you've got the Turiya, which is constantly running in the background.
It's just we don't access it.
Yeah, it is constantly running in the background. So I always remind that it's essentially, Western psychology and Indian psychology, which are both schools of thought that I refer to and take lectures on. It's interesting because it's saying the same thing, but we have to shift the perspective a little bit and understand that Turiya is constantly running in the background. So if we have access to Turiya by switching in that in-between states, then of course we can manifest and we can embed Sankalp into our deeper subconscious.
So it's like Turiya is behind the scenes actually calling all the shots. We are not able to because it's, behind the curtain. But we think that, it's my subconscious or it's my conscious mind doing it. And the moment you're able to kind of peek into that curtain and see, oh, this is not me actually. So is this where, because we are able to access and take downloads from the superconscious, this is where the ideas also come from, and suddenly, we are able to find a solution of something which we felt that, it is an unsurmountable task and I don't think so I'll be able to do it. This is how we are able to do it. So what I understand is that sound healing can put you through that state of consciousness where it's easy, or maybe Yog Nidra, where it's easy to get into that state where you can access Turiya also, because your subconscious is more calmer. There is no fight, there is no resistance. And that's where you are kind of fluctuating, like you said, that all of those states are happening simultaneously. So it's like, I'm kind of hovering from one to another, right? This is how it happens. So it's calm, but you're still able to see through all of that consciousness state levels at the same time. That's what I'm...
Yes, but also like one can't be, for example, in deep sleep and awake at the same time. So those three layers of Jagrat, Swapna, Shushupti are still quite exclusive. But it's the Turiya that is constantly running in the background. So that's something to know, because one can't be fully asleep and awake at the same time. It's impossible. But one could be in an alpha where you kind of are just idling away to glory. Your body, like in Yoga Nidra, they say that your mind is fully aware as though you're awake, but your body is completely relaxed as though you're asleep. So that in between can happen. But yeah, the Turiya is constantly running in the background. What's also interesting is the concept of Turiya is not just the superconscious in relation to us, but it's the superconscious that literally connects all of us. So when I dip my toe into this collective pool of consciousness, you have as much access to it as I do, which always baffles me, because you might have seen, if we go back to the history of inventions, there are a lot of times great inventions that happen simultaneously, and it makes me jump into this aspect of Turiya and go like, hey, maybe there's still not as much scientific evidence, but maybe that's what we're all tapping into.
Yeah, so many times it has happened, right? That you see someone working on an idea and you're like, I thought of it. Why did I work on it? I knew it, this is gonna work, right? So is it also the time, because now when you talk about this, I'm assuming that that's also the point where your telepathic ability is also heightened, because if you are delving into a superconscious state, or maybe not superconscious, a collective state, that means I have access to other people's energies also, and it's easy for me to kind of also tap into their energy, or maybe communicate something to them, if that is the intention.
Yeah,
right?
If that is the intention. Because again, most of the communication we know is verbal, but there's so much of stuff that happens at a non-verbal level, at an intentional level. I mean, I think we were just talking about this some time back. Like, just an example is with animals. If you have a pet, you know you can communicate with your pet, and you don't need words. So, I mean, this is just, again, slightly a reductionist perspective of it, because it's a lot more like to understand tapping into this superconscious. But this is an example that, we can, through this, tap into other people's intentions and thoughts. Having said that, again, it's about the way an individual uses it. It's not like, oh, I have the superpower and I can do it repeatedly.
Right. Do you think that sound healing can replace medicines? Eventually.
So for me, I look at sound therapy as a complementary treatment or a supplementary treatment to medicine, also as a preventative treatment. So a lot of the alternate therapies that we come across, whether it's sound, whether it's even movement therapy, it's designed to, even Ayurveda, it's designed to actually not let the person fall ill in the first place if you do them, with discipline and often enough. But should we then fall sick what allopathy or, mainstream medicine does is then it takes care of the symptoms in that moment. However, with these kind of therapies, we're going into the root cause, which means that we either consistently practice so that we can not even, fall sick to begin with, or we can develop enough awareness to know when we're about to fall sick. For instance, a lot of, it's flu season right now, and many people are sick. What's very interesting is, and I've spoken to a lot of practitioners, and it happens with me as well, before we're about to fall sick, we'll know. Most of us are blind to that awareness. Most of us will not even pay attention to the fact that, oh, I'm about to fall sick, and then the next day we wake up and we're sick. And then, of course, we can take Kada and all these different things if you want to avoid medicine. But if it's reached a point that you have 104 fever, for example, then you will need medical intervention. What alternate therapies do is it gives you enough awareness to not reach that point as a preventative measure. Now, the other aspect is that it is very, very complementary or supplementary to main medicine, meaning that it can help these medicines work faster. Why I'm saying that it can't fully replace is because what modern medicine can do is if there is an invasive intervention that is needed, I don't think these alternative medicines are there yet to be able to affect. I mean, we do talk about frequencies getting deeper into the body and affecting, say, your cells and all of those things. But, that's still, again, not fully, scientifically, we're not there yet to be like, okay, this frequency will cure or help heal your liver, or this frequency. There is still some controversial evidence out there and discussions out there. But I personally feel that we're not there scientifically. But preventative and supplementary treatment, yes, yeah.
Okay.
I also feel like medicine, the complications that is developing in this world right now is also, it's evolving to the extent that, our science is not being able to catch up with the kind of viruses and illnesses. So that's why.
Sure.
Not to sound like a skeptic, but more of a realist. Yeah, I have one foot in the mystical world and one foot in the science world, and I think the two have to go hand in hand rather than either or. It's kind of like how in Advaita philosophy we'll say there's not a white or a black, it's shades of grey. So I don't feel like there's an either or. I think they have to work together. And we have to stop warring and just marry the two together.
Has there been any instance where you saw such an unexpected drastic result where maybe the doctors would have said that this can't be reversed, but after the sound healing session, the person felt better or maybe reversed the whole scenario? Has it happened? Any of such case study that you have?
In terms of pain, it has happened. I've seen individuals who come in with dull pain that they've struggled with for a chunk of their life, and then they come into the sound session, and after the sound session they don't feel the pain. So that has happened, but eventually the pain has returned back, because I'm also, we're looking into the research of the effect of these different sounds. So for me, it's very important to keep checking in with these different individuals that I'm working with. So this goes to show that it's not a one-off. And I think that's one of the drawbacks of modern medicine, that it's made us very comfortable with immediate gratification. That I'll go for one sound session and I'm healed forever. And I wish that was true, but with, therapy modalities like sound that go into the root cause, one has to practice it consistently again and again. And it's more about management rather than a one-shot healing. So I feel like this is where also it's important to highlight that what is healing? We think healing is like 1 minute I'm sick and the next minute I'm healed and that's it. But healing is an ongoing process. It's about management of whatever is happening. If we look at it from different aspects, not just physical, but also at an emotional aspect. So much of our physiological ailments and illness is actually tied to also psychological, emotional aspects. So with modalities like this, I've noticed that, the pain will go away. That's one of the most drastic changes. But then eventually comes back.
Come back again.
And then you sort of go through it again. And this has been proven through science as well, that you've got pain receptors and how it helps with pain management. The other aspect that I've seen it helps a lot in is sleep. I think one of the biggest example is me myself. I have had trouble falling off to sleep for most of my life. And now, in fact, just the other day, a friend said that you drop dead like that. And that's because of, constant, consistent practice to be able to now enter rest and recovery mode much faster. So there's a lot of, again, scientific evidence how sound helps with sleep as well. So these are, I think pain management and sound is something, sleep is something I've witnessed myself, experienced myself, and I think it's the biggest impact in terms of my experience with sound therapy.
Does Earth have a frequency? And if yes, can we tune into it? Does it help us in healing? What is your take on that?
So there are different, again, schools of thought. We've got some practitioners, especially those who work with tuning forks, who would say that, there's an earth frequency tuning fork. Now we've got different instruments tuned to that. What I know for sure in terms of the science and what's been proven is we can talk about the Schumann resonance, which is essentially the electromagnetic resonance in relation to the ionosphere. So that is very interesting because it's 7.83, and if you recall, I said that the alpha brain wave is 8 to 12. So for me, that's something that really interests me because it also correlates to psychoacoustics or my inclination towards how frequencies entrain the brain waves into an alpha. So I feel like that's the most substantial one that I can say I understand and I can apply.
Is there any sound that has been mentioned of in our scriptures which we still have not decoded yet? Any such sound or music that's been mentioned?
I think so much.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much to unravel when it comes to science. And because science is about reliability and validity, can we replicate the results or not, it limits our understanding of sound because it is so subjective. So I think, for example, Chinese medicines, and you've got those 6 different sounds, healing sounds, even Om for that matter, when we correlate Om with the Trinity or the 3 aspects or the 3 levels of consciousness, there's so much to decode, which I feel like, we have not been able to do. One of the things that we're trying to look at least in terms of my own personal endeavor to uncover sound, is using the tool of EEG, brain waves, to then see how different sounds are affecting us. So we actually try to see what is the body going through, what is the brain wave going through as we expose it to different sounds or instruments. But again, there's so much more to unravel. Like when an individual is making the sound of or shh or ha, what's happening to you on different days and different states, it's yet to be uncovered.
Interesting. So even if someone gets brain scans done, in fact that was my next question, that if there are any research studies or brain scans done in terms of that this is what the state was before the sound healing session, this is what is after, I'm assuming that would also differ day to day, right?
It would. Having said that, there is research in terms of PET scans and fMRIs which show that sound can have an overall impact on the nervous system in terms of course, one aspect is, I already mentioned, the autonomic nervous system, but also in terms of better cognitive ability. So that can be seen because it has similar impact as meditation, right? So if you're again entering an alpha delta brainwave state, then it will have similar impact on your body, on your nervous system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can sound really alter our DNA, or is it just a myth?
I wish I could say it can, but at this point, it is still a bit of a myth.
Okay.
Because, DNA itself, to alter DNA means it's so much more than we just alter DNA and it'll change the course of our existence as we know it. I think the reason why this myth came about is perhaps because of epigenetics, meaning that what sound can do is, we all know sound affects the molecular structure or affects us at a cellular level. like how sound has an impact on water. We are mostly water. We are made of these different particles. So the vibration can affect it at a cellular level. It can help transform, or not transform, but alter or change the biochemistry of the body. So all of these different factors can then eventually have an impact, on our gene code. But it's not something that'll just happen immediately. It's a slow,
over the course of time.
Yeah. So I feel like it's not the DNA, but this whole myth perhaps came about because it affects us at that level, at a cellular level, at the level of biochemistry. So I think it's more epigenetics rather than just DNA alteration.
And does it also unlock, because what we know is that our body hold on to trauma, right? When we go through something, it's just not mental. Our emotions are also stored all over our bodies, right? So, and sometimes we're not able to kind of put a finger to where exactly it's coming from. Maybe my back is aching, maybe I'm feeling something in my throat. We always say that, I'm just having a really bad backache, but it's actually your emotions. So does sound help in also unlocking or releasing the trauma in the body? Does it help and does it heal that?
I believe it does, and from two different perspectives. One is that we already know that trauma does get locked into the body physically.
Yeah.
That's when we have approaches like psychosomatics. Peter Levin has done a lot of work where he talks about how trauma is
You
stored
have
in
to
different
tell the
parts of
audience
the
what
body.
exactly is psychosomatics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like it does have an impact from two different perspectives. One is psychosomatic, which essentially means that the body has the ability to hold trauma or hold memories in different parts, physically, physiologically. So Peter Levin, he really pioneered this work. He's the founder of somatic experiencing, which is talking about how different parts of the body can hold on to the memory of the trauma. And if we physically release those parts of the body, whether it's through very small, movements like pendiculation, or whether it's also sometimes done through other more rigorous movements, this is similar to the bottom-up approach, or accessing the trauma from the physical body and then letting it pour out from an emotional or a psychological perspective. So from this perspective, sound can affect, because sound is not just sound that we hear, but also vibration. So for example, if you expose somebody to a tuning fork and you place them on the body, through vibroacoustics or through actually sending the physical vibration, you may be releasing certain muscle sets where there is trauma held. So that's one aspect. The other lens with which I feel like we can access and work with trauma, this is why a lot of PTSD patients also find relief after sound therapy, is because it again puts the body into a rest and recovery mode or a parasympathetic activation mode. In simple layman's term, it makes you feel safe. And if you feel safe, then again, if there is stuff that you had to work with, it can come through. So this is why a lot of you'll notice sound therapy is used in conjunction with a lot of other therapeutic modalities. Like, people will go into past life regression therapy, but they'll use sound. People will go into deep guided meditations, but then they'll use sound to sort of help you reach that state a little bit faster. This is also why sound therapy is called a great beginner or a starter kit for individuals who have never done any sort of practices, spiritual practices per se, because it's putting you into a more rest and recovery mode. You can bring your guard down, you can feel safe, and then you can let all the unfolding happen. So yeah, from those perspectives.
Right. Is there any forbidden sound that can really damage you as a person, maybe emotionally, mentally, can get you on the wrong track? This is what we've been hearing, right? That there are certain sounds. For example, if you go through Instagram Reels, how they talk about that there are certain satanic frequencies that are embedded in the music, and you don't even know that what kind of music we are listening to, which also awakens and arises a lot of negative emotions and energy in our body. So do you think that there are forbidden or harmful, endangered sounds also like that?
Sound definitely can harm us.
Okay.
Just as it can heal us, just as how it can create, it can also destroy. If you look at certain, like too much exposure to, say, ultrasound or even infra, then we actually have instances of, repercussions in the body like dizziness, nausea. There are actually weapons that are based on this particular understanding, where you have like these devices that are made to generate frequencies that can leave a person feeling disoriented. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's something like a mosquito device which is used, when there's a strike and they want to not calm the people, but want to break down the crowd. Then sometimes these sonic weapons are used where, you're
These
not.
sounds are.
Yeah, so it may not be audible sound. Sometimes it's a really low sound that is below the listening capacity. Sometimes it's a really high sound that us humans may not be able to hear, but it can disorient us. So again, if we go through the spectrum, we can only hear just a small
Range
spectrum.
of,
Yeah, it's just 20 to 20,000 hertz. But we've got below as well, and we've got super high frequencies as well. And there have been effects on individuals. The word that continuously comes to me is disorienting. So there are also instances where people have gone off to mountains and, with snow-capped mountains where there are like instances of avalanche or some sort of natural calamity. And then they come back feeling disoriented or a headache or nausea. And then, when you look into it, there are these low humming frequencies that they were exposed to that they, of course, didn't hear, but that led to those bodily repercussions. So yes, there is, I think, sound can do a lot of damage. Having said that, given the age that we're living in, where a lot of alternative therapies are coming forward, and we have a lot of people who are doing sound therapy and sound healing, I feel like the damage can also happen if we expose ourselves to different modalities without the right intention. So that is another damage that sound can do. Like, I've seen a lot of times that people are taking massive gongs very close to the ears of people and just banging. That is physically going to be a lot of pressure for the eardrums, but also the intentionality. Like, this is why when we are training individuals for sound therapy, intention as well as intuition are very important aspects. So your intuition will tell you, right? If you take an instrument close to somebody, intuitively you would want to play it lighter because it's so close to the eardrums. But when we are not listening to our intuition, when we don't have a set intention, then we're banging instruments close to individuals and causing harm. So maybe it's a great singing bowl with a lot of healing frequency, but if it's done with the wrong intention, then that can also cause damage. So I think, that is an important aspect of sound, intention and intuition.
So if I ask you that what kind of music people should not be listening to, which can be damaging for them, is there any one answer to that?
Not really. I have a brother who listens to metalcore to calm himself down because it's cathartic for him. So it really depends on how your nervous system, how your nervous system takes it. And we have so much memory attached to sound as well. I think that's another aspect of sound. And I think earlier you'd asked about trauma, associative memory. We associate a lot with sound, like, how a particular smell will remind us of a particular phase in our life. Same with sound. So if somebody has been conditioned to feel calmer around like heavy metal music, then they will feel calm, even if to me it sounds disturbing or to you it sounds something different, So it really is very, very subjective. What I would still tell people in terms of what we can avoid listening to is super high frequencies, very, very high pitch frequencies that can, because it's too much, it overstimulates us. So then that can be a little bit taxing for our nervous system.
So I'm sure you would have heard of subliminal messaging, right? And the music also, and that also happens in our advertising all across, right? So for people who do not know, what it means is that we embed messages in it happens in music also. So they would embed messages in music that are very difficult for you to hear, but your subconscious will get it. So if they want to convey something to you, if they want to awaken or rise a particular emotion or feeling in you, it would be tuned at such low or such high frequency that your ears won't be able to get it, but it will reach your subconscious and the task is done, right? So when I think about sound like that, then I feel that sound is the language of the subconscious, right? My subconscious understands sound. Maybe to my conscious mind, it's just that one particular range like you spoke about, but then my subconscious can hear and interpret all the range it has, right? And that's how it speaks. And what my subconscious is able to decipher is actually it actually leads to what energy I will be put in, right? So for me, it was, when I was also kind of going through this whole before doing this podcast, it was very interesting perspective that how sound is such a beautiful language of a subconscious, whatever we want to do, the kind of state we want to get in, right? Now, subliminal messaging can definitely be it has the potential to be very beneficial if the right subliminal messages have been embedded, but ordinary people won't know, right? Is there any way that we can differentiate that I should not be listening to this or I should be listening to it? And why am I saying it is, because of this whole positivity movement, I have come across many such music pieces on YouTube, which talks about that, it has subliminal affirmations of, attracting abundance, becoming rich, or maybe becoming well and healthier, right? Now, of course, my intuition, my intention is that, I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to feel better, right? I don't know what is actually being programmed into my mind. You're getting my point? So, technically, people won't do it, I'm assuming, because it's on such a large platform. But there can be some people, right, of a particular nature that they might program us in a very different way also, if they have that power to embed such a damaging message to us, right? How do I differentiate? How do I know which subliminal messaging music is good for me and which is not? Because I can't hear it.
Yeah.
Is there any way?
This is interesting because if we can't really hear it, like I am aware of, when one is put into a calmer state and then affirmations are embedded into your subconscious, like I was mentioning Sankalp or Yoga Nidra. But this aspect where, okay, I've put in an affirmation and it's going to get into your subconscious, but you can't really hear it, the researcher in me is a little bit like big question mark. Maybe it's not even there to begin with.
Yeah.
And if it is,
placebo effect.
Exactly, placebo effect, which is also great because placebo effect in itself is proving to you that the healing capacity is within you.
Sure.
Right? So for me, it's a big question mark in terms of, does it work at all to begin with? And if that's a question mark, then both the good and the damage that it does to you is a question mark.
Sure.
Like I'm a big believer of intention. Like if somebody has exposed me to like a great song, and I should also highlight that the melody itself, for example, if you're listening to a particular song which is mostly in major chords, and harmonic science is a whole different tangent. Music therapy is highly researched, and that's where it's a little different from sound therapy, because in sound therapy we're not always using harmonic or melodic sounds. Sometimes it's just frequencies that may sound like noise, but you're still affecting the nervous system, whereas music therapy is about melodic, harmonious sounds. So imagine if you're listening to a lot of like major chords, which is usually very uplifting, happy music. In that, if you're embedding a dark subliminal message, as a researcher, I'm thinking, but the
frequency of the music is very different.
Frequency is still,
sure,
benefiting you at a different level, at the biochemistry of the body level, So I just feel like there are so many different layers to the way sound and music affects us, that if you embed one dark message underneath over a really happy tune, is it really causing your that subconscious to enter a dark space, or is it that your subconscious is already going into the dark space and then it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy? So for me to understand these controversial conspiracy theories in the world of sound, it's very interesting, because I'm just like, it's a nice mirror to see where we are, like, how do we trust these little signals and messages, and where do we know that it is the external message, or is it coming from within?
Before you came here, we also were discussing over the messages that exercising one's vocal cords, how that can also be a part of sound therapy itself, and how it can unlock whatever trauma we have been holding on to, right? Would you like to kind of double tap on that?
Yeah, the vocal, the singing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, sound therapy isn't just exposing yourself to somebody playing the instruments for you or listening to certain tracks or binaural beats. It's also singing. It's also your own vocal cords. In fact, that's one of the most powerful ways that you can practice sound therapy on your own. The thing with vocal toning or just generally singing is that it's both Nada yoga or sound therapy, but it is also a form of pranayama or breath work, because we inhale and then we produce sound. We inhale and then we produce sound. So you're getting into a breathing practice as well. So I think it's one of the most effective things. And then, of course, furthermore, if you add not just sounds, but if you add a song, for example, then the associative memory kicks in. I'm sure we all have that one song that when I sing this while driving in the car, I can never be sad. It's because you're breathing, you're generating nitric oxide, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system, and you're tapping into a happy memory. So there are so many aspects of just singing out loud. I think if all else fails and you have never experienced sound therapy, just sing. Just sing.
Just sing.
Yeah.
Nice. Can sound therapy also reprogram our negative beliefs?
I think quite like most of the calming, rebalancing, reharmonizing modalities in the world of alternative medicine, you can reprogram your negative beliefs and thought patterns, because again, what you're doing is you're accessing a safe space and then you're reprogramming your subconscious or embedding a different thought process into your system. But also I want to understand, when you say reprogram negative thought patterns, what do you mean by the reprogram?
So for example, there are a lot of modalities that if I have beliefs about myself that I don't deserve this, or I'm not worth it, no one loves me, right? So there are different modalities that can help you change that. It can be through hypnotherapy, it can be through NLP, right? Does sound therapy also has that power where I can reprogram these negative beliefs and basically convert it and change it into positive beliefs, or more empowering, having more love for myself, having more faith within me, or whatever negative belief we are holding on to?
Yeah, for me, now I'll answer this from a little bit more of a personal lens. For me, I feel like at the core of it all, we all love to love. We all are compassionate creatures. If you look at a baby, or if you look at a tiny creature like a puppy or a kitten, we're designed to love. We're designed to cooperate with one another. Sure, we say survival of the fittest, but those are things that eventually get conditioned into us. So I feel like that ability to essentially be able to love, to cooperate, is already within us. Now, when we start to get these negative thought patterns, it's coming from some sort of external conditioning. Whether it's trauma, whether it's something that happened in childhood, whether it's repeated exposure to certain kind of stimuli. So then, if we take alternative therapies, whether it's past life regression or sound therapy, we are essentially trying to recondition and come back to the baseline, is my belief. So then, of course, sound therapy can also help, because we're just reminding ourselves. It's like it's reminding yourself and remembering that I have the capacity to love. we all have the capacity to love.
Okay, before we wrap up, just a few takeaways that I would want you to share with the audience, that if anyone is going for their first sound healing session, how should they gauge that, this is good for them, or this is a sound therapist that they would want to do it from?
So I think one is whenever you're about to enter a session, ideally a sound therapist should check in with you if you have some major ailments like epilepsy or a pacemaker, or if you're expecting. These are just pure baseline essentials. If the person hasn't checked with you, then it's a bit of a red flag. It's a very popular term these days. Because then, they're sort of exposing you to sounds and frequencies without checking if you have any contraindication. So I feel like that's a good way to gauge if it's an experienced sound therapist.
Sure.
The other aspect is, of course, to notice the dynamics. It's a little bit challenging when you're in a sound session, but like I mentioned, if you go to a sound therapy session, I remember this happened with me I'd gone for my only sound therapy session in Mauritius, and it was, for the lack of any better word, the worst experience of my life. It left me shaken up, just completely dejected and really overstimulated. Like I literally had like a heart palpitations after, because the instruments were played so loud, so close to my ears, and I anyways have very sensitive hearing, that it wasn't intentional. So I think somewhere we think that the therapist knows best, but please trust yourself as well. So, one is, of course, you'll watch out for if they've asked me the right question. But the second is, after or during the session, am I feeling like, because sound therapy is relaxing, but it also helps to release. I've had sessions where the individual feels uncomfortable during the session, and then after the session, you have to give them support tools. So please listen to yourself. If during the session you feel like, I just cannot lie still, I'm feeling restless, sit up. It's fine. Listen to yourself. You don't have to force yourself. But then after the session, given the experience you've had, is the therapist in giving you the right tools to then deal with it. So I always say the sound session begins before the sound. The space holding begins with talking to the individual who's coming in and trusting you to hold space, understanding, then the sound itself, and then after the session.
Okay.
After the session, the integration tool could be that maybe I want more silence. Maybe I want to talk. Those who like to intellectualize their feelings. Maybe I want to draw. Just yesterday I had a sound session, and then today I was talking to, this individual, and they were telling me what's unfolding for them now, because the sound continues to work on your system for the next 24 to 48 hours. So are they holding space for you after as well? Ideally, that is also a sign of a good sound therapist. Again, different from just playing sounds. It's so much more than just sound. It's the before and the after as well.
Yeah. How frequently should one take sound sessions? What should be
Listen to your intuition, I would say.
Okay.
There is no standardized amount I can say. But in my experience, I've noticed that if you take too many sound sessions, I met somebody who was doing alpha brainwave sound sessions every day, and they were getting really irritated and highly stimulated because I feel like it can also sensitize you a little bit more. So you have to be mindful, like too much of everything is bad. So moderation is key. So I would say, you have to listen to your intuition. And if you feel like, okay, now I'm getting too sensitive or too restless, or even something as small as like the construction sound next door to my house is irritating me, it means that it's increase your sensitivity. And as much as we would love to go off to the mountains or the forest, we live in the city. We are constantly exposed to sounds. So we have to learn to manage. Ideally, when somebody comes in, say for sleep issue, I'll just give you an example, and they have sleep issue and they want to work consistently with sound, I'd be like, okay, we'll work with you once a week.
Okay.
That's a good, once a week or once every 10 days. It's a good bit. If still they feel very restless, then we even increase it to fortnightly. And then if they are responding well, then we can even shorten the duration. So it is again based on, you practice, You pay attention to what's happening, then you practice again. If we don't pay attention to what's happening, then we again fall into the trap of blindly following. So yeah, I wish I had an answer as a sound therapist, but I always tell this to the people who come in and trust me to hold space, that you hold the answer. I will ask you and you will answer your question for me. Yeah.
What all are the popular concerns or ailments that one can actually rely on sound therapy to heal themselves?
So in terms of actually things that work, sleep is a big one. Sound really helps with sleep because we've already spoke about how sound helps the brain waves to slow down or to entrains the brain into much more relaxing brain waves. So that helps a lot. There's also been proven research on pain management. And again, from my experience, I've noticed instantly the awareness of pain is a little bit less. Like you feel the pain less, or maybe your nervous system is just managing the pain better. So if you have chronic pain, for example, back pain, then, you can listen to sounds, or, if you're getting a sound session, somebody could place a singing bowl on your back and the vibration can help with the sound. Apart from that, there has been research in terms of certain anxious thoughts simmering down as we expose ourselves to more soothing sounds. That again could be based on, of course, the brain waves, but it's also because of associative memory. So yeah, these are like at the top of my head, I can say that they have definitely proven benefits and results in terms of sound therapy. Yeah.
And one last, what do you think, what's the role of silence in sound therapy?
I love that you asked this question at the end. So silence is the most important sound, according to me. When we chant Om and we wait for that last bit when there's no sound at all. And that's when the magic happens. When we talk about Nada Yoga, there are two types of sounds that Nada Yoga talks about. The Ahata, which comes from two objects hitting each other, and the Anahata, which is the sound that is there when nothing hits, which is basically a vibration. So the objective of Nada Yoga or even sound is essentially to then become aware of your inner vibration. And for that, you don't really need an external sound. So we do all this Om chant, we sit through an hour-long singing bowl, Tibetan singing bowl therapy. We expose ourselves to 432, 528, all these frequencies. And then when we're sitting in silence, we feel a momentary thoughtlessness, or we feel just this momentary peace and calm. That is the ultimate sound that we are trying to achieve. So all of it amounts to being able to then sit with silence. And we think it's silence because we can't hear it, but there's certainly a vibration, there's certainly a frequency that is there.
Yes. Thank you so much, Priyanjali. Thank you so much for this conversation. Loved every bit of it. I think my biggest takeaway from this conversation is that sound is the language of your subconscious. And I think it is just going to make us more mindful of what kind of sounds we expose ourselves to. And I think I'm definitely going to continue practicing my Om chants. Definitely makes me feel a lot better. So thank you so much. And is there any last word that you'd like to tell audience?
If you feel that you need to do something to access sound therapy, not really. I think it's always within us. The next time you hear a baby cry, really listen. The next time you hear a cat meow or a dog bark, really listen. And then if there's no sound around you, just listen to the sound of silence, and you'll notice that sound therapy is always accessible. That would be my last word. And also that sound healing is essentially you accessing your own ability to heal. We all have the innate ability to love, to heal yourself. As sound therapists, we are simply presenting you with that, to enter that state. But essentially the healing is happening on your own. So have a little faith in your own ability to heal and love.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who stuck to the end and watched this entire episode. I hope that this definitely gave you a lot of insights about how sound healing can really help you heal your body and elevate your consciousness. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel if you really like this conversation. Please share it with someone who's almost on the verge of going for a sound session or not. Maybe this is going to help them. And we're going to be back with another exciting guest in the next episode. Till then, take great care of yourselves. Thank you.